Welcome back. Today we're going to be working on irrational numbers and approximations. Our content objective is students will be able to determine whether a number is rational or irrational and estimate irrational numbers. Our language objective is students will be able to describe the difference between rational and irrational numbers. And why am I learning this? Well, it's important for real-life problems like using estimates of irrational numbers to approximate the diagonal length of a rectangle. So background knowledge. Quickly, let's remind ourselves what a rational number is. It's basically a number that can be expressed as a fraction. So those include terminating decimals, and that includes repeating decimals as well. So irrational, which is the opposite, are basically numbers you cannot write as a fraction. So that means they do not terminate, decimals that is, and the decimals do not repeat. Okay, so whatever a rational number is, an irrational number is not. So the other thing we went over was the square root. Just a quick reminder, it's basically a number that when you multiply it by itself is going to give you back that number. So let me give you an example. The square root of 49 is 7. And why? Because 7 times 7 is 49. Now, please keep in mind that we are taking the square root of positive numbers. And so if a is greater than or equal to 0, and we square a to equal b, then a is the square root of b. So let's real quick talk about perfect squares as well. You can definitely generate them yourself. Just take a number, square it. So 0 is the smallest number. If I square it, it's going to be 0. So square root of 0 is 0. 1 squared is 1. So 1 is a perfect square. When I take the square root of 1, it's 1. 2 squared is 4. So 4 is a perfect square. Square root of 4 is 2. So again, you can generate perfect squares. Basically what that is if you take the square root of it, it's a nice whole number. It's not irrational. It doesn't go on forever. So one more example, 3 squared is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. Okay, so now the other thing that we went over in the previous lesson was we determined what two consecutive integer lies between a specific square root. So here, if I took the square root of 7, I would say it's between the square root of 4 and square root of 9. And from that, I was able to say, okay, so it's going to be between 2 and 3 because the square root of 4 is 2 and the square root of 9 is 3. So I'm able to tell you what two numbers it lies between, okay? We also went into estimating what between the two numbers, which one is it closer to. So we basically rounded to the nearest integer. So for this example here, we figured out, okay, so it's going to be between 4 and 5, but which one is it closer to? And we were able to say, okay, it's closer to 4 because square root of 16 is closer to square root of 17. So we're going to be applying both of those concepts in our lesson today because we're going to go a little bit more into detail. Instead of rounding just to the nearest integer, we're actually going to round to the nearest tenth. So you want a little bit more information. So let's take a look at our first example here. It says approximate the square root of 47 to the nearest tenth. So first of all, step number 1 is we're going to try to figure out the value of the whole number. So here, if I looked at the square root of 47, I need to determine, okay, so what does that lie between? Well, I think it lies between the square root of 36 and the square root of 49. This helps me a lot because then I'm able to narrow it down and say, okay, so it's going to be between 6 and 7. So think about it. If my answer is between 6 and 7, what's it going to start with? Hopefully your answer is 6, okay? Because it can't start with a 7 because if it started with a 7, it wouldn't be within my range. So let me give you a visual real quick. So on a number line, if I have 6 here and I have 7, and it has to be within this range, notice all of these numbers would be 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9, 7. It cannot start with a 7 because 7.1 would already be out here. So it doesn't fall within the range. So notice, if it's between 6 and 7, it has to start with a 6, okay? But one thing that I do want to keep in mind is it's definitely closer to 7. Does this mean it's going to start with a 7? Absolutely not. It just means it's going to be on the further end, meaning it might be towards 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9. So please keep that in mind because a lot of students assume, okay, since it's closer to 7 because it's closer to square root of 49, it's got to start with the 7. No, Never, okay? It's going to actually just mean it's closer to that number. Okay, so now that we figured that out, what I want to do now is figure out, okay, so what number, because I'm asked around to the nearest 10th, what number should I choose? Because I need to figure out what's it going to be, 6.1, 6.5, 6.9, what is it going to be? Well, because it's so close to the square root of 49, I have a feeling it's going to be pretty close to 7. So again, it's not going to start with the 7, but it's going to be towards the end. So it's going to be either 6.8, 6.7, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and do 6.9 because I feel like it's really close to 49. All you're going to have to do is guess and check. So here I'm going to go ahead and take 6.9 and square it. So essentially you're going to do 6.9 times 6.9. We're going to definitely be practicing multiplying decimals today. So 9 times 9 is 81, 6 times 9 is 54, plus 8 is 62. Put a 0, 9 times 9, 6 times 9 is 54 again. 6 times 6 is 36, plus 5 is 41. Go ahead and add what we have and move our decimals. So I got 47 point, well, I made a mistake here. It's supposed to be a 1, correction there. So that's pretty close to the square root of 47, okay? But let's double check, because I do want you to just, I'm not going to just have you try one number. I want you to at least try 2 to confirm your answer. This is over 47, so I'm going to go ahead and also try one below it, because maybe it could be closer. So let's try 6.8. So again, you're just going to square the number. I'm not going to show you. I'm just going to tell you right now that 6.8 squared is 46.24. Now between these two numbers, which one do you think is closer? Well, this one's 0.61 over, okay? And this one is, let's see, 0.76 under. So because this one's closer, I'm going to go ahead and go with 6.9 as my answer. So I'm going to say the square root of 47 is approximately 6.9. So really all it is you're going to be estimating. The more accurate you are with your estimations, the less work you're going to have to do. If you're not good at estimating, you're going to find yourself trying a lot of numbers until you get the right one. So you definitely want to make sure you're starting with a really good number that you feel is closest to what they're asking you to. It's going to save you a lot of time. Okay, so let's go ahead and try another example. Here it says to approximate the square root of 19 to the nearest 10th. So here I want to figure out, okay, so what's the whole number? So I'm going to say the square root of 19 is between the square root of 16 and the square root of 25. So here I'm going to go ahead and say the square root of 16 is 4, the square root of 25 is 5. So it's definitely going to be between 4 and 5, but now I need to decide, okay, so is it closer to 4 or is it closer to 5? Well, let's see. Here, 16 is 3 away, and 25 is 6 away. You write away here. Okay, so I would definitely say it's closer to 4, okay, because this is only 3 away in comparison to this, which is 6 away. So basically all that means is on a number line from 4 to 5, it's on the range, it's closer to 4. So we might want to try numbers like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, etc. But real quick, we do need to understand, because it's closer to 4, all it means is it's towards this side. It doesn't mean I'm going to start with 3 or anything. Okay, so I know my answer is going to start with a 4. Let's go ahead and start guessing. What's it going to be? 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4? I don't know. So using my logic, I'm going to go and say, let's try 4.4, because it seems like it's kind of in the middle. So here, 4.4 squared is going to be 19.36. That's pretty darn close. But again, I don't want you to just try one and stop there. You need to try one more to confirm your answer. So here, this one is over. So let's go ahead and drop it 1/10 down. So let's try 4.3 squared, and that's going to give me 18.49. So real quick, let's see. This one's over 0.36, and this one is under 0.5. 4.51. So I'm definitely going to say that my answer is 4.4. So I'm going to say the square root of 19 is approximately 4.4. Please make sure that you understand we're using approximation because it's not exact. Because if we said 4, then it's misleading. You're kind of saying that 4 squared is 19, which is not true at all. Okay, so I'm just going to try one more with you, and then I'm going to actually have you try some on your own. So for number 3, let's take a look. It says approximate the square root of 135 to the nearest 10th. So here we want to figure out the whole number. So the square root of 135, what is that between? I'm going to say it's between the square root of 121 and the square root of 144. From that, I can go ahead and say it's going to be between 11 and 12. Okay. But real quick, let's decide, is it going to be closer to 11 or closer to 12? Let's see. From 11, how far apart is it? I'm just going to find the difference to figure out how far apart they are. They're 14 away. Okay. How far is 144 and 135? I would say it is 9 away. So I would say for this reason, it's definitely going to be closer to 12. Now, I want to stress with you one more time. Just because it says that it's closer to 12, just because it says it's closer to 12 doesn't mean it's going to start with a 12. It just means on a number line, if you have 11 to 12, it just means it's closer to 12, which means we're going to probably go along 11.8. 11.9 or 11.7. Again, it doesn't mean it's going to start with this 12, because if it did, it would fall off of the range to 12.1, 12.2, 12.3. And my range is supposed to only be between 11 and 12. So just be very careful with that. Okay, so for that, guaranteed, it has to start with an 11. It can't start with the 12. But because it's closer to 12, I'm going to go ahead and start with maybe 11.5. Okay, and here it's totally subjective. I might start with 11.5. You might think 11.6 is better, etc. It's all subjective. So here I'm going to go ahead and test it out. 11.5 squared is 132.25. Now looking at that, that seems a little too far. So I'm going to go ahead and say let's try 11.6. I square that and I'm going to get 134.56, which is good. This is a lot better. So again, I can't stop here. This is just one number that's pretty close. In order to really confirm my answer, because it's under, I'm going to go ahead and try one more and do 11.7 squared. 11.7 squared is 136.89. So right away, I can definitely see it's going to be 11.6 because this one's much more over than this is under. So I'm going to say the square root of 135 is approximately 11.6. Okay, so now what I would like you to do is go ahead and pause the video and try number 4 by yourself. Okay, so let's see how well we did. For number 4, hopefully you said that it's going to be between the square root of 49 and the square root of 64, which means it's going to be between 7 and 8. It is closer to 8, but again, it's still going to have to start with the number 7. A lot of students are going to think, oh, because it starts closer to 8, it's going to have to start with an 8. The answer is no, because again, here you're telling me it's between 7 and 8. So the only numbers here between 7 and 8 is 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.9. 8.1 falls off of my range, so that would be wrong. So yet again, please make sure you're in the correct range. Even though it's closer to 8, it has to start with a 7. Okay, so let's see. It's definitely closer to 64, and for that reason, a good number to test out would probably be 7.9. Some of you may have picked 7.8, etc. Again, people are going to try different numbers. So I went with 7.9, which gave me 62.41. It's a little too big, so I went ahead and went down to 7.8 squared, which gave me 60.84, which is good. However, I still need to check because this is a really good starting point, but in order to really determine that that is my best estimation, I'm going to have to try one number below. 7.7 squared is 59.29. So here, this one is, let's say, 84 hundredths over. And this one is 71 hundredths over. So notice some of you may have wanted to stop here, but actually in reality, this 7.7 is closer. So I'm going to say the square root of 60 is approximately 7.7. So please don't try a number and just stop there. You always want to get very close to the number and then either go over or under compared to the number. So please make sure you double check before you claim one to be an answer. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at number 5. Go ahead and pause the video and try number 5 by yourself. Okay, so here hopefully you said that it's going to be between the square root of 81 and 100, which means it's going to be between it's going to be between 9 and 10. Definitely going to say it's closer to 9. Okay, so of course it's going to start with a 9. A good starting point might be to start with 9.2. Again, you might have picked something different, which is totally fine. 9.2 squared is 84.67. That is not enough, so I'm going to go ahead and bump it up. I'm going to try 9.3, which is going to give me 86.49. So some of you might want to stop here. Please do not. This is only one number that's close. You still need another number to check. This one wasn't good enough because it was just way too off, so that didn't really help me. But now I have a really good baseline. This is close, but in order to be 100% sure, I should try one more up to see. 9.4 squared is 88.37. So real quick, let's check. This one is, let's say, 51 hundredths over. And this one is, this is about 1 and 36 hundredths over. Whoops, I meant under here, not over. So automatically, I'm going to go ahead and say 9.3 is my answer. So I'm going to say square root of 87 is approximately 9.3. So please make sure you're double checking. You should have two numbers as your baseline. Okay. So now, last one, go ahead and pause the video and try number 6 on your own. So the square root of 77, I'm going to say is between 64 and 81. So that means it's going to be between 8 and 9. So right away, it's got to start with a 9. I don't care if it's closer to one number or what. It has to automatically start with a 9. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the numbers. It's definitely closer to 9, which means it's just going to be on that end. It's going to either be 8.7, 8.8, 8.9, etc. So starting with an 8, let's go ahead and test out some numbers. I'm going to check out 8.7 squared, which is 75.69. That is not close enough. So let me try 8.8 squared, which is 77.44. Here I can stop. Why? Because here, this one's already over and this one's under. Okay, so that's good enough for me. This one is 0.44 over, and this one is about 1.31 under. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the square root of 77 is approximately 8.8. Now right here, if you started with you shouldn't have tried 8.9 because here it already went over. So guaranteed if you went the next tenth, it's going to be even more over. So please keep in mind you don't always have to do 3. Okay, so that's actually going to conclude the lesson for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, until next time, bye.